Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, August 29th, 2024. I'm Donna Will, Professional Development Coordinator for the Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to today's follow-up webinar on organization-wide positive behavior support. What is it and how to get involved? On the panel today, we have Jennifer Jeffrey Pearsall with Shepherd Pratt. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options to hear the webinar, by computer and by phone. And if you look at the panel on your right, labeled audio, you can click for either computer or phone to switch for the best option. We are recording the webinar and posting this session on YouTube and the DDA website. We have two documents for you to download, and they are today's PowerPoint presentation and the Maryland DDA's PBS organization application. Both are available for you to download in the handout section in the panel. If you are listening by phone, you can request that it be emailed. Questions can be typed in the question box in the webinar panel, and we'll get to those towards the end of the presentation. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Jennifer Jeffrey Pearsall. Good morning.
Good morning, Donna. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to see folks on today and welcoming folks who are joining via recording as well. So we can get into the content and move into the next slide on our time today. So this is a follow-up webinar to one that was completed earlier this month, giving a deeper overview of positive behavior support. So what I want to do today is just do some brief introductions to orient you to those who are involved with this work, and then go into a brief overview of positive behavior support and take a deeper dive into the details on the 2024-2025 cohort process and review the application process associated with that. And there will be an opportunity for questions and answers as we move forward into this content. Thanks. So just to give some brief introductions from the partnership perspective, we have this work was initiated and continues to be a high priority for the Maryland Department of Health Developmental Disabilities Administration, and they've been involved with folks from the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota as a University of Excellence in Positive Behavior Support, and myself from Shepherd Pratt as a technical assistance and training provider for positive behavior support here in the state, and partners from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore at the university level who are also building that training and technical assistance element of positive behavior support and integrating this work into the pre-service realm of university training. So Donna introduced myself. I am Jennifer Jeffrey Pearsall. I am with Shepherd Pratt, and I am a training and technical assistance provider for positive behavior support. And I've been doing this work for the past 20 some odd years, and really enjoy this organization-wide application of positive behavior support across all tiers. I'm going to, I think we have Dr. Meg here and Terrence as well, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Terrence Proctor, statewide coordinator for clinical services for DDA. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Meg DePasquale, Director of Clinical Services for DDA. Thank you all again for being here.
Wonderful. And then if we could go to the next slide, I think by means of introductions, there we go, perfect. By means of introductions on a webinar, right? It would be great if you had an opportunity to just reflect on what you are hoping to get out of this session. If you have any questions that you came into this session with, you can certainly post them now. What you were hoping to get out of this session, you can post that as well. Like Donna mentioned, we will go through the questions that come up during the webinar towards the end of the webinar, but having them posted early on gives us a sense of where you're coming into this with and what you're hoping to get out of it. And I can use that to kind of shape some of the conversation that we have during the webinar today. So if you have any thoughts of what you'd like to get out of this, then you can feel free to put those comments or questions into the question area on the GoToWebinar panel, right? And we'll monitor that as we go along. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'm going to provide a brief overview of positive behavior support. And for a more detailed review, there is a recording from the August 19th webinar that gives a deeper dive into positive behavior support and some of the questions that came up during that session as well. But I want to move into the next slide with getting into some content and just again orienting us to the big ideas of positive behavior support. And when we think about positive behavior support, we're really looking at elements in ways that we are promoting practices that promote the respectful delivery of practices and focus on supporting the dignity of individuals. We think through this process as building social and other functional competencies and skills, with a heavy emphasis in the universal element of providing supportive contexts. And how can we work with our staff and within our organization to really create and promote those supportive contexts that focus on prevention of challenging behaviors. There is within this work the element of a progression of prevention through more intense interventions. So thinking through a progression of assessment and intervention and decision making through a continuum of supports, and I'll show that through an illustration in a moment, with a heavy emphasis on utilizing and leveraging those evidence-based practices that we know are helpful and effective in supporting individuals. The elements that we're going to talk through and work through with cohorts tap into the systems element of this work and thinking about how are we organized as an organization around workforce management and other organizational structures to help really support the work with positive behavior support. But how do we really support using that framework of positive behavior support? How do we organize ourselves to put those evidence-based practices into place with high levels of fidelity? And the real cornerstone of this is creating those positive, consistent, safe, and predictable environments for individuals to enhance quality of life. All right, next slide. The positive behavior support, the work that we are talking through here, organization-wide work, is a team-guided process. We're talking through and working with organizations in again, when we think through workforce management and all of the elements of how the organization is structured around training staff, coaching staff, evaluating how well certain practices or approaches are implemented, and what are the impacts, what are the outcomes. We really need to take a team-guided process here. So within this cohort model and looking at organization-wide positive behavior support, we're going to ask organizations to think about the teaming process. Who's involved with this work? Who is going to be helping? Who's going to be coming to trainings? Who's going to be meeting on a regular basis to really organize how this is being implemented within your organization? So the next slide. When we think through organization leadership, and you can click twice here so we can, thanks. We want to think through who should be included. So, when coming to this and thinking through how do we want to get involved with this work, we're looking for organizations to identify a team that will engage in this partnership with us around positive behavior support. And so this looks like organizational leadership, program managers, quality assurance individuals associated with quality assurance, folks that have a really good knowledge and understanding of behavior patterns and functional skills, as well as including individuals who are supported and direct support staff. This is kind of that ultimate team, right? And so what we want you to think about as you think about getting engaged with this work is we want you to consider existing teams and avoid adding additional teams. So who within your organization, how are you organized at this point at that with a more of a multidisciplinary organization team that could that could take on the training and the ongoing evaluation of positive behavior support with this idea of working smarter, not harder. So this work is really guided at the organization level by this type of team. And if, you know, as you go through this process of thinking through your engagement with this work and the questions come up, we have contact information for you to be able to reach out and ask questions about the team and who you might want to identify and what that might look like depending on the size of your organization. So again, there's flexibility in this. These are general guidelines and this is going to look different depending on, you know, kind of the size and purpose of your organization. So ask questions along the way. We're happy to answer those questions for you. Next slide. When we think through positive behavior support, we talk about organization-wide positive behavior support. Oftentimes, if you can click that once, that would be great. Oftentimes what we think through when we think our minds hear the words positive behavior support, we think about those individualized support plans that and that is true, and that's a large part of the field of positive behavior support and the work that you all do. And if you can click again, that would be great. What we're going to be talking through this cohort model is we're not ignoring tier 3, and we have some activities and supports around that we'll talk through in a few minutes. But with the teaming process, we begin with tier 1 and we think through this in an organization-wide capacity element. And what do we put into place as the foundation for all individuals that are supported to increase that consistency, predictability, safety, et cetera, for all individuals in your organization. And so we focus in the beginning of the cohort model and the initial training that we do with teams is around the universal elements. And so this is very much focused on looking at the teaming structures that you already have, the intervention supports and services that you already have, that we look through this process through how are you already organized around training and support for staff, and think through what elements are, you know, how can we enhance some of those elements? How can we put in some certain tier 1 strategies like consistency with language that can help really with creating that positive and proactive universal system. As you work with this partnership and go through this process, while we start with tier 1, we also will be offering some tier 3 types of trainings and supports, and we'll then also include some of those tier 2 support. So tier 1 supports are those things that are put into place that help support everybody. And when we have strong tier 1 supports in place, those individualized plans have a greater chance of being implemented well and with a high degree of fidelity. When the universal systems are not as strong as they could be, it's sometimes harder to implement those individual plans when the basic routines and procedures and structures of the environment, whether, you know, it's a home or employment setting or community setting, are not, or a little bit disorganized. It can make it harder for those individual plans to really be as effective as they could be. The next slide, please. I've mentioned a few times the terms predictable, positive, safe, consistent, and equitable, and those are really the cornerstones of positive behavior support, especially well across all tiers. But when we think about tier 1, what we want to be creating are, or in enhancing environments to make sure they're as predictable as possible, that we're really thinking through the element of creating safe environments that are really consistent, and that helps with that predictability, and are positive in nature with and centered around equity. And when you think through those terms, I want you to be thinking about how those terms relate to other practices or other priorities that you have in your organization. And as you're thinking through those, we'll tap on the screen to make those appear, of some of the things that have come up in conversations. So if you want to click on some of those, that would be great. So quality assurance, person-centered approaches, MANT, you can click a few more times, positive behavior support, trauma-informed support, and there should be one more, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the other element that we want to highlight within this work is that we're not, with positive behavior support, we're not coming in with a lot of new strategies, right? We do have, you know, some core practices that we put into place at Tier 1, and I'll talk through those in a moment. A big part of the time with the cohort work, especially the first year, is talking through what are your other priorities and how does this all work together. Again, working smarter, not harder. And if you move to the next slide, this kind of illustrates the logic of how we do that. We have teams really focus on what are the valued outcomes that you have for your organization in supporting the outcomes of the individuals that you support, as well as supporting outcomes for your staff. In order to do that, you're using data, right? Data will help, or information helps inform what your goals are, what your outcomes are. And once you've identified what your outcomes are, then it's thinking about what are those practices that you want to leverage to achieve those outcomes. So what are the elements of trauma-informed support or positive behavior support that and person-centered practices that you want to leverage in order to achieve the outcomes that you're attempting to influence and to impact. And then the other element here is, once you've identified those practices, and we'll talk about some of those Tier 1 practices in a moment, what are you going to do with the systems to support staff in implementing those strategies? And if you can click one more time. When we think about systems that promote success, we're talking about how do you incorporate, you know, what does the training look like? What does the coaching and performance feedback look like? So perhaps you're working on a strategy of increasing positive social interactions between staff and the people that are supported. If you're going to try to increase the amount of positive social interactions that are occurring, then where are you providing that training? Are you working with program managers to really get them really proficient with that, so that they can then coach and support the direct support professionals? The other elements here that promote success are evaluating fidelity and outcomes as well. So these are kind of the gears that make all of this work. The next slide. So this is what it looks like at Tier 1. When I just talked through the teaming process, but I want to give some concrete examples of what this also looks like at Tier 1 for all. And so when we work with your team, we'll engage in training around positive behavior support, that you can then take elements of that back and provide training during onboarding and during some booster trainings for staff. And you'll also think through where you want to start with this work, and starting small before going broad scale across your organization. In the core features of what this looks like, those kind of practices at Tier 1 that help promote the predictability and consistency of that home, the community setting, employment setting, et cetera, are identifying a common language and values and routines. And again, if you didn't have a chance to join on the August 19th webinar, it's been recorded, and there are some concrete examples of what this looks like in that session. So I'd encourage you to go back and look at that recording if you didn't already, if you didn't see that webinar or were in that webinar. But with Tier 1, we're talking about creating a common language and identifying what those routines are, so that there's real clear consistency on, for instance, what does it look like to be respectful during the dinner routine. We have procedures that we can help promote the teaching and prompting of the values and routines and the increase in the positive social behaviors. All of this is being done in a way that that staff support individuals in identifying what that common language is, what those values are for their environment, and respecting and those identified values and the dignity of individuals. We also talk through strategies to acknowledge and recognize those positive social behaviors. So putting more emphasis on acknowledging, the positive elements that are occurring on a regular basis versus putting our attention to some of the challenging behaviors. So making sure that we're putting prompts into place in the environment for staff to be able to remember to recognize the great stuff with the people that they're supporting, but also with each other. So we talk through things like positive social interactions and praise and recognition for individuals and staff. And then we talk through strategies that align with more proactive and function-based responding to challenging situations, again, with alignment of the other priorities that you have within your organization. And I've talked about data and the team-based focus. You want to go to the next slide? So with Tier 1, we do a lot of this work in the first year with your team and really thinking about Tier 1. And so at Tier 2 and Tier 3, and you can click there. Yeah, for Tier 2, we will talk through what are some strategies that are necessary to add additional layers of support, but maybe perhaps not the most complex individualized support plans. Just, in thinking about those early interventions, incorporating mental health and wellness interventions into this. And you can move on to the next. That. And then we also talk and do a lot of training around Tier 3 and how do we develop those positive support plans? How are they integrated with other positive supports like trauma-informed care and DBT and PCP? And what does the assessment process look like? What does the process of intervention planning look like and support planning look like? And then how do you monitor these interventions? So we, through this process, address all 3 tiers of support, that continuum of positive behavior supports. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great. So when we put this all together, what we're looking through here is a continuum of supports with positive behavior support. And then, when you look at those concentric circles, those are kind of the gears that make this all work. That looking at data and information of where individuals need support, where the organization wants to improve outcomes, identifying how do you then map practices to those desired outcomes, and then figure out how do we train and support staff to implement those practices with high fidelity are really the keystones of positive behavior support. So that's what we're going to be working with teams on, is this logic, this kind of this way of work, this logic model within positive behavior support, to really organize that high fidelity implementation of effective practices in your organization. All right. So the next slide, please. So that was a brief overview of positive behavior support. There are more concrete examples in the August 19th webinar. And so if you are kind of missing chunks or wanting to know a little bit more, I encourage you to review that, the recording of that. I want to get into the detail on how to get involved with this work at this point, really talking a little bit more concretely about the cohort model, the steps of the cohort model, and then give you a review of the application. So if we could go to the next slide. I want to start by illustrating what this looks like as far as how the support for positive behavior support flows from the state to the program level. And then give you more concrete information about, even dates and activities for this next for this cohort too. We have, the Maryland DDA started this work and with the aim of really developing a statewide implementation infrastructure, which is wonderful and a bit unique and kind of trailblazing for this work within this country for positive behavior support. And so they've made a strong effort and investment in developing state level training materials, resources, and evaluation processes so that there's consistency in what supports and resources are available to organizations in Maryland. They've also invested in developing out the regional capacity and partnership to be able to use these materials to then be able to provide the training and the supports to organizations who are interested in engaging in positive behavior support. And so regional staff, partners like myself and UMES, and the regional contacts, and I'll share their information in this webinar, will be using these materials that are consistent to provide training and coaching to organizations who want to engage with this work. At the organization level, you'll engage with the state partners and the regional, the teams with training and coaching and ongoing technical assistance. And through that process, you as an organization team develop your plan for implementing positive behavior support in your system. We provide guidance, we provide supports, we provide suggestions, and you provide the elements of how to make this work, right, within your context. So again, if you are a large organization, what is this going to look like for you? If you're a small organization, what is this going to look like? We have those conversations with you and help you contextualize this. This is a framework, and that's the beauty about positive behavior support. Within a framework, you can really contextualize your roadmap for this. So at the organizational level, you receive training and technical assistance and support to develop out your own action plan for this work on how to train, coach, and support staff and evaluate the efforts and within your programs. And again, starting small, not going full organization wide across all programs from the beginning, but you're going to think, where are we going to start? And then, as you fold programs in, then they're responsible for the additional contextualization of positive behavior support. So when I say things like at tier 1, developing a common language, then the program is going to work with individuals in that program for them to identify what is the common language, what are the values for our home as roommates, for example. All right, and so that's how this information and the supports flow from the state to the organization level to the program level. All right, next slide, please. So steps in the cohort model. At this point, you should be thinking, you want to determine your organization's interest and readiness for organization-wide positive behavior support. I'm going to take you through the key elements of readiness. That will give you some more concrete things to kind of sink your teeth into as far as readiness for organization-wide positive behavior support. If you go through that process and you feel like this is a really good fit for your organization, then there's the application that I'll review with you that we ask that you complete and submit. And then through the application process, we're going to identify organizations to bring into the cohort 2 process. And if you're accepted into that cohort 2 model, then we ask that you're willing to engage in training activities that are provided by the state and leverage the supports that are provided to continue to build and maintain positive behavior support in your system, and engage in ongoing implementation through action planning. All right, so those are the things that are kind of the process by which you want to identify, are you ready for this work? Do you feel like your organization is ready to engage with this? The information I'll provide in a few minutes will help with that. And then the application process, and if you're involved with cohort 2, it's the willingness to be engaged with us around training and technical assistance and coaching and all those fun things. And I'll give dates for that as well. Next slide, please. So the initial cohort organizations, we have 2 organizations right now who are part of the cohort 1, that's SEEK and ARC of Northern Chesapeake region. And you could be on this map at some point too. The cohort process started just prior to COVID. And I would say within 6 months of the training in 2019, after the training in the late summer, early fall of 2019, the organizations that were part of cohort 1, as did the rest of the world, experienced the challenges of COVID-19. And so there was a lot of kind of delays, and it's a hard time to start the work when you have something like that come up. And these 2 organizations have been continuing to engage in this work and are actively involved with this cohort model. And one of the things I also want to illustrate here is that as the state builds the statewide infrastructure and capacity for this work, the aim is to grow and continue to build more organizations that are involved with this. Similar to what we would talk to you through as an organization, is you start small and you build your successes and you build from there, and that's what the state is doing. So we're really excited to be launching the cohort 2 at this point, to bring on more organizations and continue to then bring on a cohort 3 next year and cohort 4, et cetera. So you could certainly be on this map anytime soon. Can you go to the next slide? I want to go through the key readiness and commitment elements, and I will orient you to the handout that is in the control panel. There is the Maryland DDA application. And so I'll walk through that in a few minutes just to show you what that looks like and some brief information on how to complete it. But I want to just let you know that the information that I'm sharing right now is found in Appendix B in the application for more details. I want to just share some of the readiness and commitment elements that we're looking for. And these readiness and commitment elements are in place because we know within the field of positive behavior support that if these elements of readiness and commitment are in place at the beginning of the process when organizations get involved with this work, they have a much higher level of success of sustaining this work over time. And so that's why we have these elements listed out, because we know that ultimately, if you take a look at this list and you say, yeah, we can agree to all of these things, that you have a higher likelihood of being very successful in sustaining this work over time. I talked to you about the teaming process of this. And so there's a teaming element of this, but there's also making sure that there's executive support for this work, that your leadership and your organization at a high level, the highest level, are aware of this work, that they are supportive of the work, that they are willing to allocate time for staff to engage in training, in meetings, in technical assistance activities. And I have that articulated for you in a real concrete way, so you can have those conversations and share what this looks like. That there is a long-term commitment to this partnership and being involved in this process, that you're committed to a 3 to 5 year involvement in the cohort process. Again, we know that change takes time, and so if you can commit to this work and being engaged with the training and the technical assistance and the evaluation that's provided to you, that you have a higher likelihood of being able to sustain this work over time. The other element is to have leadership involved with the training and technical assistance. Now, it doesn't necessarily, it could be a designee, but it should be somebody who has the ability to make some decisions about resource allocation during team meetings. The other element is that organization-wide team. I talked through that a little bit. Again, you should have representation of a range of roles within your organization, depends on the size of your organization. It really, there needs to be a team approach versus this falling kind of on the shoulders of an individual, so that can help sustain the work. We do ask that you identify 1 or 2 points of contact for positive behavior support. This would be the person who will be the point person for the Maryland DDA partnership staff. So once you become part of the cohort model, the communication from us will go to the points of contact, not to the full team. We also will be engaging those folks in some additional focused trainings throughout the year with other points of contact in this cohort, all right? And they can then take that information back to the team so that you don't have to have a full team going to additional trainings or meetings. And so they'll be the ones coming to those additional webinars. Can you move on to the next slide then? All right. The other elements of readiness is that, all right, I must have put that in there twice. I apologize for that. Can you move to the next slide? All right, I'm gonna talk through the activities and resources for Tier 1 training. I have it done like this, but then I also have a year at a glance slide that's coming up in a moment that, this is by activity, and then I have a slide that takes it through by month. This is also in Appendix E in the application, and that there is an estimated time commitment for activities in the application as well. So whether you're the executive leadership of your organization and attending today, or if you're a representative going back to share this information with others, within the application, there's a little bit more detail as far as the time commitment for these, but it's all in there. If you are selected to engage in cohort 2, there will be a welcome and orientation webinar for your organization leadership, representative, and point of contact on November 7th, and that's a virtual meeting from 9 a.m. to 10:30. The cohort 2 teams will then engage in the orientation webinar, and the welcome webinar will talk through questions that you might have about how to get organized for this work, what your teaming structure might look like, who to bring to the table, get to know your organizations a little bit better, and help provide some guidance as you prepare for the team training. We have the team training for Tier 1, the cohort 2, scheduled for the 18th and 19th of November, as well as December 11th, where we'll go through all the core features and elements of positive behavior support and Tier 1, and we'll get you action planning and thinking about how do you contextualize this for the organization, what is it going to look like for us, where are we going to start, etc. That's going to be an in-person training, and we're working on the location, and we'll have that location soon, hopefully. Then there will be some ongoing technical assistance, about approximately 9 hours of personalized technical assistance across, from December until June, and then it'll continue, on until the next year. That is the ongoing technical assistance can be virtual or in person. I have it to be determined because it really is identified by the organization team and the consultants that you have. for this work, so the idea is that it's scheduled according to your convenience. We also provide an on-site in-person meeting for like once a year for organizations, and that allows us to have some in-person time with you in your setting. This is also the place where we come and we will walk through what's called a fidelity tool and on the core elements of positive behavior support to provide feedback to you to assist with your action planning for this work and your growth for this work. The next slide, please. The additional elements of this too include, like I had mentioned, the additional webinars for your points of contact, your PBS points of contact. That's like a community of practice for where all of the cohort points of contacts come together and have an opportunity. We can talk about special topics, answer questions that you have. We have those identified for January, March, and May for 2 hours each. Those are virtual. The specific dates we'd like to identify with the points of contact within the cohort so that we can make those more accessible and working with people's schedules. I had mentioned when we talked through the continuum of support that there are also some tier 3 resources that are available. And this year we are starting what's called more of a PBS facilitator training. And that is for individuals within organizations who are involved with the individual support planning process. And these trainings, so it's not for your full team, but it's a resource for your organization on really the assessment and intervention process for positive support plans. Those are scheduled for the dates listed below or on the slide: November 6th, January 8th, the 5th of February, the 5th of March, and April 9th. And those are virtual full day events, again, for just 1 or 2 individuals within your organization or whoever you would like to send to receive that training on the assessment and intervention process for individualized support plans. And then the final activity that we are working on putting together is kind of an annual meeting, a gathering, if you will, for those who are involved in the cohort process across all cohorts. So not just for cohort 2, but this year it would be for cohort 1 and cohort 2, and then the following year it would be for cohorts 1 through 3. In person, location to be determined, and we have loosely identified the 16th and 17th. So those are kind of the put on hold dates. This is intended to be somewhat like a conference, but more like a gathering where we'll have some additional team training, but we'll have also some special topics throughout the day and perhaps opportunities for cohorts to share their work as well. Next slide, please. I wanted to put this here as a year at a glance. I think, the way I listed it out before was by activity. Sometimes it's nice to just see what the year would look like as far as what those activities are. You'll see that I have, when there are virtual activities, that there's a V. When they're in person, there's an IP. Again, looking through this, making sure that when you are having communications with leadership about the time commitment, the application gives a good overview of the hours kind of per person or per type of person within the organization. And that some of these are team activities here, and some of these are for just individuals within your organization. So the facilitator training is individuals within your organization who are involved and want to build a greater expertise on the assessment and intervention process for those tier 3 positive support plans, where the team trainings are where your full team would need to be engaged with that. All right. And then there's the ongoing technical assistance and on-site visits that'll be scheduled with each organization as we move through the year. And again, as you have questions, if questions are coming up, in your mind, feel free to put those in the question area of the control panel, and we will answer those as they come up. All right. Can we move to the next slide? Because I'll get into some additional dates here. I talked to you about dates for the activities, but I'm going to talk to you about you can go to the next slide for the application. The application dates are, the application is due October 1st by 11:59 p.m. on the 1st, and I'll share how to submit that in a moment. And then teams will be notified of their status of the application for cohort 2 by November 1st. So you'll hear back from the Maryland DDA folks by November 1st or on November 1st as to the status of the application. And we're really excited to have folks apply for this process. We're looking at bringing on 8 to 10 organizations for this cohort. So we're really excited to have these applications come in and get started with some organizations this year for cohort 2. If you could go to the next slide, I'm just gonna share a screenshot of this and how to submit this, and then I will share the application. But I wanna start by letting you know that the application is in here as a handout, and it is a fillable application. If you're having trouble with the application, reach out and we can talk through other ways of getting this information from you. But hopefully the fillable application is easy to complete. And then what you're going to need to do is submit this to Terrence Proctor. He introduced himself earlier today. He's the coordinator of clinical services, and his email is provided here on the slide and throughout the application in numerous places. All right. So I am going to then just walk through the application. All right. Perfect. All right, and so the application itself provides a summary of everything that I just talked about this morning with you. It does indicate here that the due date is October 1st, and we'll talk through the selection process. I'm going to talk through the scoring process after I go through the application, so I'll go through this in a little bit. So there's an introduction and overview to this. There are places where you have Terrence's email is in here numerous times. So if you have questions, you can send them to Terrence. And I also have some other contact information on another slide for your regional coordinators. And so we have the application submission process is in Appendix A. The application goes through an introduction. Like I said, it talks about the history of this work. It really is a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of what we've talked through within these 2 webinars. So it gives a history of this work here in Maryland, talks through a description of positive behavior support, and then a description of the training and technical assistance that is provided to organizations through this. And again, this is becoming involved with the cohort process and getting access to the training and technical assistance. There's no cost to the organizations, to yourselves, to have, to go to the training or have the consultants come and visit you or engage in technical assistance. So this is a no cost for participation. These are services that are provided to you through this work. We just ask that you really think through the readiness components and that your staff will engage in that process. So this is all talked through in the beginning part of the application. The readiness elements, everything that we just talked about a few minutes ago, are listed in here as well, where you can read about the points of contact, the organization team, what the training and technical assistance looks like. I think one thing that wasn't detailed in the presentation itself was a data sharing commitment that we do ask that there is a willingness to share information with us, but de-identified information with us. Nothing that has any individual information involved here, but de-identified about information. That's a critical component of us being able to support you as an organization, and then also, you know, being able to then look at some of these data across the state and thinking about the broader impact of this work. If there are questions about that, feel free to reach out. All right, and then I'll go through the application review process in a moment. So just close your eyes while I scan so you don't get seasick here. The application starts on Appendix A and is a fillable application. You should be able to type, you know, click on these elements and type your answers into here, and then save the document with all of your information that's typed in here. If you have challenges with this, or if it's not the easiest format for you to use, just let us know and we'll work with you on that. We ask for some information about the organization, you know, name, who are we contacting about this, phone and email. We ask that you provide a brief description of your organization and describe or list the types of services that you provide within your organization. We ask that you give us an indication of the number of people that your organization supports, the type of population that you serve, you know, around age, need, diagnostic categories. We ask that you then also provide a bit of information about why you're interested in applying for this to become a part of the cohort model. You'll see that these blue sections of putting where you can insert information, you have more room than what this blue square shows. The text will continue. You can continue to add text in here. So you're not necessarily limited to this short, this small amount of space here. But again, you know, we're also trying to illustrate too that you can provide information in here and detail in here, but it doesn't have to be extremely long. We're just trying to get an understanding of your interest in this work and why you're involved, why you want to get involved with this. There needs to be that leadership buy-in. So we're asking that you can discuss the commitment, the leadership commitment and long-term commitment to this work. We do ask that we see if you are already implementing positive behavior support, and if so, what does that look like in your organization, the work that you're doing around positive behavior support. We will then also like to get some information from you about the other types of supports that you are involved with or that you have within your organization. The alignment is a big element of what we talked and work with teams on, and so it's helpful to know what other types of practices that you are leveraging and putting in as priorities within your organization. We'd like to get an idea too of how you currently support staff in their learning and implementing the new strategies, and how you help support how they maintain consistency of implementation over time. So information here about your professional learning opportunities and your approach to professional learning within your organization is helpful to include in this section. To get an idea of the size of your organization, we ask that you provide some of this information here as far as the number of your direct support professionals, administrators, managers, other staff. You can specify that information. And we also would like to get an idea of your engagement with these webinars, whether you attended in person, if you attended both or one, if you viewed one, or you know, if you're looking at this, you've attended at least one of them virtually or in person, but there is a did not attend or did not view. Part 2 of the application then gets into elements of specifics of who are the points of contact. Again, this is the person who is in the application, has definitions of this within it, but the point of contact or points of contact are the individuals that we will interface with the most regarding logistics, and they will also be your folks who are going to go to some webinars and engage in that community of practice across the cohorts to get some more training or have questions answered along the way. We also ask that you list any administrators or management level professionals who will participate in the organization-wide training. Again, we have a lot of space in here, so this doesn't mean that you need to have 5 people, 5 administrators or management level at the team training, but we would like at least 1 person identified here. We'd like you to list out other team members who would participate in this and who you've identified at this point as potentially being on the team. When organizations are selected into the cohort process, we'll have that welcome and orientation webinar, and we can have more conversations about who you've identified on your team and answer any questions that you have. So it's helpful to have that information, and you can send the application to Terrence there. We then ask that you complete within this application some appendices, and this is the readiness and commitment checklist. I went over this with you a bit when I was talking about the readiness elements, and so you'll go through each of these, that there's a commitment to this work, that there's a team identified, that there is administrative leadership that is engaged with this work and commits for this work for a few years, that your team commits to work together at least once a month during the year to work on action planning and moving this work forward, that you engage in some elements of buy-in and trying to assess whether staff and others in your organization have continued buy-in for this work. I talked about the commitment to ongoing staff development and training, that there are points of contact that are identified to serve as the primary communication for this, that you engage in ongoing internal coaching and training. That's that systems element that I was talking about earlier, and that there is that you're willing to work on identifying some data to help guide your process and action planning. So we ask that there is executive sign-off on this, and it's dated, and you can use this space to list your roles as well. All right. So those are the elements of the application for completion. We do have within the application as well some more definitions of what the roles are for the terms that we're using. There are a lot of different terms in here. And if this is a go-to place to go back and understand a little bit more of those terms. This is what I was referencing too, that we've calculated out the approximate time per year of what each individual would be putting into this, as far as organizational leadership, your membership, your team, general membership on your team, your points of contact, and those facilitators who could engage in those additional tier 3 trainings throughout the year. So the time commitment plus regular team meetings is listed here. That can be helpful when thinking about how this, your readiness for this and commitment to this work. All right. We also have a list of the events for and dates for cohort 2. So I went through all of these in the slides, so you'll have that detail in the slides. as well as within the application. So you can kind of look at the year at a glance for this year and think through how this works with your schedules and kind of maybe even just penciling in these dates for now as you move forward with the application and the review process. All right. I can go back to the slide deck now. Perfect. Next slide. So the applications are due on October 1st at 11:59 p.m. or by 11:59 p.m. And you can send those directly to Terrence. His email is throughout these slides and in the application itself a few times. And so what we will be doing, there'll be each application that's completed and submitted by 11:59 p.m. on October 1st will be reviewed by the Maryland DDA PBS partnership members. And the scoring criteria is listed here. So it is, there's a scoring of 50 points, 5 points for the full completion of an application with executive leader sign off. 15 points for an indication of commitment to this work, understanding the long-term investment, 20 points for kind of the capacity of this work. So thinking through your teaming structure and some of the things that you already have in place as far as procedures for training staff and different priorities that you have. 5 points for the data sources that you have and existing ways of collecting information and reviewing information and data within your organization. And then there would be an additional 5 points for any indication of participation by family members or people who receive support. Right. So those are the scoring criteria that we'll be following throughout this process. All right. Next slide. All right. So we have the folks to contact for this. You can contact Terrence with questions and your regional, we have regional coordinators of clinical services. And so we have Kyra at the central region and Kiana in the southern region. And so those are wonderful people to contact with additional questions as they come up, as you think through your engagement with this work. And then if you get into the application and have some questions around the application process. So feel free to reach out to those individuals with questions along the way. And then I will move it to the next slide for just opening this up to questions that folks have. And I haven't seen anything come up in the control panel, but I might have missed something. So if anybody else has seen anything come up, let me know. Otherwise, feel free to type any questions that you have into the control panel and we will certainly answer those for you. All right, that's a great question. How do we gain access to the first webinar? Donna, I'm wondering if you...
Yes, I can answer that question. We have the recordings on our DDA website, but also we have a Maryland DDA YouTube channel, and all the webinars are there. And if you email me, I can give you a link, or you can do a Google search. We have playlists that focus in on particular topics. You can search by topic, or just by most recent. And I think that that should do it. If you need if for some reason you can't download the handouts, you just email me and I can give an attachment in an email.
Perfect. Yeah, when making the final selection for the cohorts, the 8 to 10 organizations will be based on a score of 0 to 50 points or additional criteria. It is based on everything that's in the application and how that aligns with the criteria that was outlined in that scoring. So the scoring guideline that I shared with you in that last slide is going to be kind of the rubric that we use for scoring the applications. So there won't be anything additional than what's in the application and those scoring guidelines. Perfect, thanks. All right. We'll give it a few minutes for a minute or two for some additional questions that might come up. And it looks like as folks might be typing in or kind of thinking about questions, again, the application is here in the handout. If you are viewing this as a recording and you were registered for this event but maybe couldn't attend and you're looking at the recording, we will be sending out the applications directly to everybody who registered for these 2 webinars. And if you happen to be looking at this webinar in a recording, but did not register for this originally and have interest, then I would reach out and email Terrence or Kyra or Kiana with the question for the application. All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions come in at this time. So I think what we can do is say thank you to everybody for your time today. And we are really, really excited to see the applications come in and the interest for this work. We want to encourage folks to really get involved in this and continue to build out this work here in Maryland. Out of curiosity, has cohort 1 been able to, thanks Jessica for the question here, to share any experiences about this process, or have they shared feedback, progress, or concerns? We have had in the past some cohort 1 organizations share their experience in a webinar format. The content from the April or the August 19th webinar, the examples that are within that come from the cohort 1 organization. So those like concrete examples of tier 1 are in that webinar itself. We'll have more opportunities for cohort 1 to share their experience. If you want to, we can also, if you have specific questions or want to ask and connect with somebody from a cohort 1 organization, we can certainly reach out to them to see who might be available to answer questions. I think they'd be more than willing to do that. We've had some conversations in other meetings where cohort 1 organizations, members of those organizations, kind of share their suggestions, one of which is the teaming process is really important, to not let this just fall on one person, but make sure that there are kind of multiple people involved with this. But yeah, if you have questions, Jessica or others, and you want to reach out to somebody from a cohort 1 organization to get some input from them, I'm sure we could, to make that work, I would reach out to Terrence, and then we can work on that as a team. Thanks for that question, Jessica. Dr. Meg or Terrence, do you want to add anything to that question or any of the questions that have come up?
I don't have anything. I think you summed it up very well.
All right. All right, perfect. All right, well, if other questions come up, do you want to, can you move back to the previous slide perhaps? All right, within the slides, you have, you'll be able to see the contact information for Terrence and Kyra and Kiana. Those, if you have questions, you know, so Jessica, reach out to one of those folks and we can figure out how to get you connected. Perfect. So as questions come up, reach out. That's what we're here for. There probably will be lots of questions. And we really are here to answer any questions that you have. I would go through these folks, and then we will get you answers as quickly as we can. And we're really looking forward to working with you all and having the opportunity to learn more about your organizations and move forward with this next cohort of organizations with this work. All right. So I want to thank you for your time today, whether you're here in person or watching the recording. Your time is valuable. And so we appreciate your time in getting to know a little bit more about this effort. Thank you.